Peace. What's good? How y'all doing? This is ZaZaAli. Today is Sunday, June 10th, 2022. I pray that this message reaches you all in the best of health, spirit, and mind. I am doing well. Thank you for inquiring and thinking that hopefully this is this presentation, or this part two, I should say, is a long time coming. I have talked about the backstory of this Kingdom Within series in this presentation, so I will, for the sake of time, not get into that. But this particular subject matter that I'm going to talk about today is going to be, part two in a chain of events, or a chain of videos, excuse me, I'm going to do, focusing on the scientific and the, kind of data-based aspect of what's happening, behind the scenes, and then shifting from not just the scientific, but also the mental, the physical ramifications, and how that affects the mind, and a lot of different, the different dichotomies of third dimensional reality. And then I'm going to end it with it's either going to be a part 4 or a part 5, where I'm really going to get into the metaphysics and the spiritual aspects of everything that's going on. But I am, painting a picture, so to speak. And so as it's one thing to collect all of the information and put it all together, but then to be able to put it in a sort of synchronistic order, where it makes sense, where it's clear, where I'm not just, dropping off information that's going to scare the hell out of people with no proper context. I don't like to do that. So I'm very careful about, not just both of those things, putting the information together, and then also, sort of being mindful of the energetic and spiritual ramifications of that, and then also how you're going to receive it, and then I also have to be in the right type of temperament and state of mind, so that when I do deliver this information, it's not just, all of the craziness and the chaos. It's also, this is kind of why this is happening from my vantage point. And this is the frequency and the temperament and the mindset that we need to maintain in lieu of that. So this is part 2. And I would say within the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be releasing part 3. Part 3 is where I'm going to get a lot more into the actual nitty gritty of the Jim Jones juice, and really talk about the ramifications of it, what's already happened, what the potential and the potential in terms of the agenda could happen, and what we're already seeing happening, that mainstream media and none of the, you can't even talk about this online. Most of the presentation today, I can't even talk about on YouTube. So I'm only going to put a specific amount, a clip up of, certain aspects of this, and then the rest of it is going to be available on demand. So this is my original flyer from the event last October in LA, and I'm also going to be speaking in LA this coming August. So yeah, this is part 1, or I've already done part 1. The first portion is on the first clip, or there is a clip, excuse me, on YouTube for part 1, and then also you can access part 1. I don't want to get into what it entailed yet, but you can access the on-demand version, as well as watch that if you're a member of my membership group. So this is part 2. Once I finish the series, if you want to purchase the entire Kingdom Within web series, you'll also have the live footage from my Los Angeles presentation, October of 2021. It's not available on demand, but it will be a part of this series once it's complete. Again, I will be, or I don't know, again, I don't think I said this, but I'm going to be live in LA doing a live town hall slash, not a speech, but a presentation, semi-presentation slash conversation on Columinati 2.0, a divine new world order. That is Saturday, August the 20th, 4 to 8 p.m. It's going to be a rooftop event, and it's going to be dope, beautiful VIP meet and greet, and then a town hall setting with a meeting of like minds. So you can get information about that on my website as well. Excuse me. Last but not least, well, not last but not least, but I got to calm myself down. I've been like just totally in this zone for the last, I would say, 72 hours, trying to really edit this and get it clean and clear and concise to make sure that I'm able to say, give this perspective in a balanced way. So let me just slow my roll. Like I've been on like 10 mentally for like 72 hours straight. So let me just slow down. But I also have this full 2.5 hour presentation is available on my on-demand content on my website. You can also join my membership channel, which includes high quality content, well-researched presentations such as this one, weekly Ask Me Anything segment. We have a community group page. I also provide meditations and resources and more. So you can access this video there, or you can access it on demand on my website. Last but not least, I have written 4 metaphysics workbooks: The Science of Self, Change Your Mind from Lack to Abundance, Keys to Womanhood, and The Science of Sex. I've also written 2 books, Black Matters Volume 1 and 2. Volume 1, The Scientific Intervention in Our Affairs, Dealing with Eugenics, the Jim Jones Juice, Crack Cocaine, Chemtrails, shouldn't have said that, but it's okay, organ trafficking and more. And then part 2 is Plagues of Dysfunction. All of the information for those are available on my website as well. Before I get right into the nitty-gritty of this, I just want to remind everyone, because I'm seeing a lot of people that I know personally, and people in, just around, that are getting sick and that are getting really sick. And so I was thinking about this earlier. This is me having to use this coded language. First of all, you'll see throughout my slides that I, place dots between certain words because I'm trying not to have those things picked up against the algorithm. I believe that all of our email, all of our online activities, all of our, interfacing with one another through phones, through tablets, through, our Wi-Fi in our homes, through computers, all of it is being monitored and absorbed through the intelligence known as artificial. And I mentioned, when I went back and talked about my previous presentation that was on my hard drive, I had 2 copies, and I said that I believe that the intelligence that is artificial wiped it out. And someone said in my comments, in a very snarky kind of way, snide, I should say, and disrespectful, basically mocking me for saying that it was artificial intelligence, and was like, you just forgot to back it up, just admit the truth and stop lying, or something to that effect. Like I haven't been doing presentations and lectures for the last 10 years, and like I don't know how to actually back up a presentation on a hard drive. And like I didn't have it actually present, when I had my event back in October. It's just that I couldn't play it because I couldn't attach it to the screen that was in the room. So yeah, I'm being cautious, and even the images that you see on the screen, right, are painting a picture without me having to say something. This is the new modern hieroglyphics for me. And I was thinking about this as I was kind of going back through my slides, just to kind of make sure I had everything intact. This is a modern form of hieroglyphics, where I can just show you an image, and the image can tell you the message that I'm trying to convey, instead of me having to say everything, because I can't, because of censorship and because, all of those things, right? So if you look at this image, it conveys to you 100% what I'm trying to say without me really trying to say anything. And so even in the comments, as you guys respond to, this and other things that I talk about that might be, conspiracy theorists, I would like for you to keep this in mind, so that you can help me to keep my channels, off the radar, so to speak, of the algorithm. I know I'm never probably going to be able to get it off my back, and it's probably going to get worse. But in the meantime, not just for me, but just for you to be conscientious of how you're moving on social media and on the internet. Because like I said, I think that everything is being monitored. And this is even why I don't put my content up on like BitChute or what's the other one? There's 2, I shouldn't even say that word, right? But that one and the other channel, because I believe that all of those sites are data mining and monitoring sites. So I don't even have accounts on either one of, or any, the more controversial platforms that I use for research and, for content. But I don't have active accounts on those sites, because I think that they're data mining and collecting information on all of them. So that's another reason why I don't put my content on there, because I'm trying to keep my digital footprint as small as I possibly can. That's why I'm centering and I'm moving everything to my website, but I'm kind of keeping it in, you know, in a sort of small space, as small as I possibly can, in the meantime. So just to recap for part one, the World Economic Forum, we talked about mass psychosis and mind control, the timeline of 2020, China and the phone towers, hospital protocols, the white lines that are in the sky and the connection to the antennas that are located across the planet, the mask coverings that they force people to wear, the tests, the swabs that they've been sticking in everyone's noses, the technology that is nano, and then long-term CBD-19. We talked about all of that in part one. And basically just to give you guys a synopsis of what I'm, you know, I say I'm painting this picture. This is a big part of what I'm gonna try to, like, not just, you know, show you, but also prove to you all of the different sort of tentacles of this, to help you make sense of it. And so that, because for me, understanding this, understanding the agenda and how they're carrying this out is the answer to circumventing it and the solution to, you know, whatever their ultimate plan and agenda is. And I don't expect everyone to, you know, be all going down the rabbit hole or even knowing all of this. That's what you guys have me for. But I do want this to inspire, you know, those of you who are like-minded to choose what you're going to do with this information and how you're going to use this information to help us build a new world. This is not just, you know, sitting and listening to ZaZa and letting ZaZa, you know, like I said in the last video, like this social media culture and this influencer culture is making people very mentally and spiritually lazy. Coming online and telling you what it is, what it should be, how they feel, what's happening in them. It's a lot of me, but none of that is magnifying people's personal power, right? So for me, that's the whole agenda with all of this. But basically my synopsis of how I think that they, you know, kind of set this off and use this to move this long-term, dare I say, eternal agenda forward. And I say that tongue in cheek because I know what they're planning. But I also know that they're not going to be successful. But the cell phone towers in China, there was a Jim Jones juice in China campaign in China right before, you know, the big outbreak took place. The shots that people take continuously for the flu, senior citizens' homes, the white trails in the sky, the face coverings, the nose swabs, they weaponize people's sickness. And they use the protein that is known as the spike and the technology that is known as nano to infiltrate you and to infiltrate the masses in order to weaponize their sickness. So that is, and then they turned around and created a Jim Jones juice in order to 1000% magnify that crazy, insane agenda. Crazy insane is not even the right word I want to use, but it's just, it's mind blowing. So like when I tell you guys, it's not just me sitting down and putting this content together, like, no, I have to wrap my mind around the magnitude of this. Because I live in this world, my son lives in this world, you know, and it's not just, I think a lot of people, even a lot of conscious people, a lot of people who think they know what's going on, as you know, as long as it doesn't affect me and my family, they don't really realize the ramifications for the collective and how this is going to affect all of us, not just, you know, that's what's going to happen to them over there. No, this is going to have ripple effects in mass consciousness and in the future of not just Black people, not just Indigenous people, but the condition of our planet and our civilization as human beings, right? So I cannot stress the urgency of this presentation today, as well as the whole series, as well as all of the content that I'm putting out right now. Like I hope you guys can tell that I have a serious urgency kind of motivating me right now, all right? So part two today, the first part of this is going to be about the parasitic nature of the matrix, energy vampires, the collective consciousness, All life is frequency based. And then the second part, we'll be dealing with the protein known as the spike and the technology known as nano, the impact on the lungs and the central nervous system, long-term CVD19, the word that starts with a G and end with an O. If you can look at the screen, you can tell what it is. But I'm gonna, once I talk about it later, I won't be worrying about YouTube, so I'll get into that. But the technology known as M.R.N.A, the war on breath or oxygen and blood, self-replicating inoculations, also known as Jim Jones juice, magnetic radiation, the pineal gland and mind control, and then genocide in Rwanda. And again, this is only going to be part 2. I'm going to, at 2 hours, 30 minutes, I'm going to stop. Even if I haven't finished it, because I want to, keep a time frame for all of the videos. So anything that I don't get to on this list, if the video doesn't, if I don't talk about something, it'll be in part 3. All right. It is no longer about trying to wake people up for me. At this point, it's about reaching and arming the light bearers, scientists, engineers, builders, farmers, teachers, healers, great minds, and those that think outside the box with truth, those with courage, resources, love, and support to help us come up with the cures, solutions, and answers to the questions and issues currently facing us. This is about building a new world outside of this current paradigm that will not include victim-based consciousness, lack and victim-based consciousness. So if you are in alignment with that intention, or if you are already in that space, or if you are striving to be in that space, right? Moving beyond lack and victim-based consciousness and moving into the frequency of God, if you will. This is what the kingdom of God that the Bible and the scriptures talk about. And it has to start in the mind, and it has to start in the hearts and the minds of man and woman. And this is, all of the talk about quantum physics, and, there's all these deep, sort of metaphysics offerings when it talks about quantum physics. But the truth is, we're all living and experiencing and expressing quantum physics all the time. And so what's happening in 2022 is a result of where we were in consciousness as individuals and the collective in 1990 and in 2000 and in 2010 and in 2000. And all of that has evolved to make the reality that we're seeing in 2022, upon us. So this is why it's never just about pointing the finger and blaming, the elite or the powers that be, or, evil and wickedness. Like, that's an aspect of this, but the microcosm is only reflecting the macrocosm is only reflecting the microcosm that's going on within humanity. And if you sit with the average person, regardless to how much wealth or success or fame or things that they've experienced that are good in their lifetime, a lot of people are really struggling with dealing with their own internal darkness. And so the collective consciousness has brought us to this sort of bridge now that's going to wipe that existence and that way of living and thinking out. It's a purging process, so there's going to have to be a purge for that to happen. But I really believe that that's the ultimate goal in this spiritual warfare. So you remember this scene from The Matrix when Neo is released from the from the Matrix, and then he wakes up and he's inside of a sort of womb, an artificial womb, right? Well, I put the definition of parasite. Parasite meaning an organism that lives on or in a host organism and gets its food from or at the expense of its host. A person who receives support, advantage, or the like from another or others without giving any useful or proper return. And this is one of the most important scenes in the entire movie. I know we all use The Matrix as a sort of one of those movies that's like a staple in, really kind of waking up a certain state of consciousness and kind of bringing, what's happening behind the scenes to the forefront, right? The Matrix has been a great representation of that. And of course, the sister wrote the original. Sophia Stewart is responsible for writing the original, first, I think it was the first the first for sure. I'm not sure if she wrote the second, but she actually wrote the storyline of The Matrix. But this is, a great litmus test in terms of how Hollywood has continuously been unveiling and revealing itself through film, right? And so this is a great example of their overall intention and agenda that they're showing us right on the screen, right? So the people in power, or the people that used to be in power, because we're in the quantum realm, right? So we're projecting forward. This is another thing when you have all of these sort of conspiracy theorists, truth tellers, etc., with this major like warning, warning, screaming at people, yelling at people, or consistently providing content and information without any spiritual context, right? Without any love-based context. This is why the feminine, the goddess energy is so important right now, because we can't just be throwing information at people who are already stressed, people who are already struggling, right? We can't just keep throwing information at them, scary information, without proper context and spiritual insight. And so the women, contrary to popular belief, have always throughout time been the spiritual leaders. So that's why it's very important now that we not just give people information, but that we give them proper context, so they're not magnifying the fear and the low base frequency that we're all trying to, not fighting against, but trying to neutralize. So the elite, or the people in power, used to be in power. They feed on low vibrational energy. This is a frequency-based reality, and everything from matter to spiritual. I'm constantly referencing the Kybalion and, talking about the different states of reality, from physical to the spiritual realm. It's all based on the pace, or the frequency, bandwidth, love being a frequency, hate being a frequency, etc. But they understand that, and they use it to their advantage, that this is a frequency based reality, excuse me. So when we talk about spiritual warfare, we're talking about the higher and lower self. So these people that are manipulating human consciousness and declaring war on humanity, the same construct in the Matrix that has Neo, attached to a artificial womb and being harnessed it as a battery, right? This is the lower nature of humanity and of that divine consciousness that I feel, and that all of the scriptures kind of point to, has kind of gotten out of control. And so the universe, or God, Allah, whatever your concept of spirituality or religion is getting ready to intervene in order to bring us back into a central divine space so that peace can reign. But there's going to be a purge process, and the purge process is already happening. It's not even like, for anybody that's listening to me or watching this, if any of this is far-fetched, please be mindful as you watch the rest of this. If you get this on demand, or if you were in the group, like, this is very heavy, dense information that we're talking about, right? And if you are not, mentally and spiritually balanced already, this can tip you over the scale. And that's not what we're trying to accomplish here, right? I want you to watch this content at least in a neutral space, if not feeling empowered and invigorated and curious to learn what's happening. At least in a neutral space, right? I don't want you to be watching this and you're already like stressed out, ready to kill somebody, or just in a spiral of negativity, and then watch this and it add to the negativity. I'd rather you come back to this when you are in the righteous state of mind. But the higher and the lower self is duking itself out right now. And so what role you're going to play in that, and what role we're going to play in that, is going to be based on where we are in our energetic and in our spiritual countenance. Living on the heart-based chakra, or living from the lower nature of the root chakra, which is where most people are in this third dimensional reality. Satan plays and expands itself through fear and suffering, oppression, abuse, trauma, hatred, envy, chaos, and pain. So if you are continuously living and devolving, not evolving, but the opposite of that being devolving, meaning the inversion. We're all supposed to be evolving. That's what life is about. Your body's always evolving, even if your mind isn't. You know, when you're 2 years old, your genetic blueprint is already created. And that same genetic blueprint is what's going to follow you into, you know, say an 80-year-old version of yourself. Your whole genetic blueprint was already written and encoded in that one spark of life when the sperm met the ovum. And they, you know, that spark of life that is how the third dimensional reality was happening. Well, it happened in you too, right? Ye are all God's children of the Most High God. So, but that Satan plays in those spaces, right? And then it expresses within humanity as depression, guilt, shame, anxiety, and the avoidance of true self. In spiritual warfare, you cannot avoid the true self. In spiritual warfare, you cannot avoid the true self. That's your real only armor against what's taking place in the spiritual warfare aspect of this. The goal is to keep humanity stuck in their lower nature so that they continuously harness the energy. In the matrix, once you wake up, you completely disconnect. And then you can go in and you can go out, right? If you so choose to do that. But you have to wake up first. So that's what this video and this presentation is about. Giving those of you who are kind of a little unsure of how, you know, the worst aspect of this plays in the bigger scheme of your personal life, what role you're going to play in this, and, you know, how we should be operating moving forward. That's kind of what I'm trying to present. And this battery example is a microcosm of the macrocosm, right? If you are living in fear of debt, if you are stuck in a relationship that's going nowhere, if you are, you know, a parent and you have unhealed trauma in relationships with your children and it's, you know, nagging at your spirit, right? If you have wronged people that have very close connections to you and you've never forgiven them or been forgiven, all of these sort of internal turmoils is what's going to come to the surface, and we're going to have to clean this energy up in order for us to meet the qualifications to build the kingdom of God. They're using human beings as a battery for the matrix. The goal of this whole agenda is to magnify that. It has been this way for a long time. If you think about slavery, right, or world wars, famine, the condition of women all over the world. So I'm going to show a video in a little bit talking about how the electromagnetic fields of human beings affects the electromagnetic condition of the planet, right? So just imagine how the planet was suffering, or the impact, I should say, during slavery and during world wars and famine, and the extreme abuse that's been happening against women for thousands of years now. This is feeding this consciousness and this frequency that now thinks that it's time to completely take over. And artificial, or the intelligence that is artificial, is going to be their highest, you know, talk about manifest destiny, talk about natural selection, talk about Darwinism. This is their highest and best reflection of who they think they are, but it's the inverted variation of God. Because if you really accepted and appreciated the endless, boundless potential and beauty and power of creativity and of life, then there's no way that you could declare war against it. And that's exactly what they've done. And so the powers that be are now putting forward their concept of what the new God is going to be. And blockchain is going to be one of the specific tools that they're going to use to run the agenda if it is successful. All right.
Have to sacrifice their time and, most importantly, their bodies. Does this sound like something you would be interested in? your thoughts on this? Please leave it in the comments.
Now, as he said, this is a concept, right? But this is what all of the stem cell research has been about for the last 20, 30 years specifically, as well as the white lines in the sky, as well as the Jim Jones juice, as well as the towers that are radiating frequencies, right? As well as the modified genetically foods. All of these things are sort of intertwined and interconnected, but the ultimate goal is to create an artificial variance of the womb, to create this. The God of this world wants to reproduce itself in the image and likeness of itself. So this is an image on the left from the TV show Stranger Things. I just want to introduce this topic on the heels of what we just watched in the Matrix, and then the in the video, in the video of the Matrix, and then the video of the artificial womb, right? I'm going to show a video of a organism, of a life form, but pay attention to the proximity or the visual image of it, and then juxtapose that with the image of the creature from Stranger Things. And just a side note, I haven't watched this whole series Stranger Things, so I don't have full context of what happens in the show, but I did see this image in the trailer for this year, I believe, or what, maybe it was last year, but I saw this image and it was, obviously moving in the trailer. And it stood out to me so strong because of some of the information that I'm going to provide in the next video, talking about what's in the actual Jim Jones juice, right? So we're doing talking about all these different layers and levels of intentions of this agenda, and how they're using film to implant images and to implant a different dimension of consciousness that has humanity already accepting it before they even know that it's taking place. So when it actually happens, there won't be a rebellion because we've already seen this. We knew that was coming. If there's no danger, this was in a film.
Everything that lives must one day die, right? Well, maybe not everything. Consider a hydra. It's named after a one head and two grow in its place. Too far from the real hydra's death-defying abilities. They're cousins to jellyfish. See the resemblance? But hydra live in freshwater. Its body is a hollow column with walls only 2 cells thick. It's just a bunch of tentacles surrounding a mouth, no eyes or brain. The whole thing is about as long as a grain of rice. The hungry hydra stretches out its tentacles to snag swimming prey. Microscopic harpoons hook the water flea, injecting it with paralyzing neurotoxins. Then it's down the hatch. The hydra uses those nutrients to make more hydra. Check out this bud. It's a clone sprouting right from the hydra's side. Hydra can reproduce sexually too, but most often they just clone themselves. Chip off the old block. Hydra are constantly regenerating their own bodies too, replacing all of their cells every 20 days. They can do that because roughly half of the cells in their bodies are stem cells, which can develop into all the different types of specialized cells you need to build or rebuild a body. Stem cells only make up a tiny percentage of our bodies, and our stem cells degrade over time. That's why we age. But a hydra can make near perfect copies of its stem cells, basically forever. It's called non-senescence, biological immortality. Having all those stem cells allows Hydra to recover from all kinds of. All right, here we go. No body? Not to worry. No head? No problem. As long as the chopped off chunk has some stem cells, it's ready to regrow. In a couple days, the severed head has a new body. And the foot, it's got a brand new head. Soon they'll both be as good as new, except for maybe some lingering trust issues. To test the limits of their ability to recover, researchers came up with an experiment. This Hydra is genetically engineered so that under ultraviolet light, its exterior cells glow purple and interior ones glow green. Scientists basically blend up a bunch of these Hydra, leaving a heap of mixed up cells. Right away, the cells start reorganizing. Those purple outer layer cells migrate out. The cells from the inside swarm back into the center. The Hydra dumps cells from the interior to restore its hollow shape. The stem cells start dividing, differentiating, to rebuild the rest of the animal. Soon a head starts to form. Sometimes a few little heads compete to be the new top. After a few tumultuous days, what was once a mixed up pile of cells takes on a familiar shape. Researchers hope to harness Hydra's ability to regenerate, to someday slow human aging, or even regrow damaged organs. Maybe this tiny monster will one day show us the way to the mythical fountain of youth. Hey, peeps, our PBS friends here on YouTube are.
So there's a line in the middle of the video at the bottom if you were trying to read the language. Sorry, that's there. I just realized that, but I have to keep that toolbar at the bottom so I can keep track of the time of the video. But if you guys want to see this video, I can post it in the community page as well. But did you notice that she said that the when it started, the one that they were showing when it was lighting up, that it was genetically engineered, right? So keep that in mind, because I just talked about, them wanting to be the gods of this world and building a reality that is based on synthetic organisms, synthetic mindset, synthetic engineering, right? So studying this organism, which is the Hydra, which you saw in the video, is, like I said, they always have to have a host. There always has to be an organic life form for a parasite to feed off of. So looking at, I even saw a video about there's this worm called hair worm. I watched this earlier and it was super eerie. I almost wanted to put it in this presentation, but I didn't. I just like stumbled on this today and I didn't have enough context, but I know it's relative to this, especially when you watch this Hydra video. But this hair worm is a worm that detaches itself. It's in I think it said, oh God, raccoons. It was like 4 different animals. And so it leaves and then it finds a place to lay its eggs, but it like has consciousness, and then it buries itself in different insects and instructs the insects to find water so that it can lay its eggs. And this is like but I don't know if this is like a natural organism or if this is some weird derivative of all this poison that they've been spraying in our skies. So that's why I didn't put it in, but it really, it's like, it's creepy. All of this stuff is creepy, right? That's why I said it takes me time to be able to get myself in a mindset where I can talk about this stuff to you guys and still be lighthearted and laugh and make jokes and whatnot. Because I want this, again, I don't want this to convey fear, right? So I'm really going to get into the science and the root of this in the next part. But I want you guys to, the image that you just saw in the video, right? The image that you see from Stranger Things, these are all of the symbolic mental psychosis, scientific things that are happening in the background, playing on the subconscious mind, as well as in the science of the Jim Jones juice and their intention to create an immortal version of themselves, not just in immortal versions of humanity, but of themselves in particular. And anyone that stands outside of that is considered a threat and has to go from now moving forward, you know? Now, I'm really hoping that these images do not get my content flagged. I'm not going to say anything about this. These are purely screenshots. If you have been researching the science behind the scenes on what's going on, you will be familiar with these images. Again, and if this gets my video flagged, then that should tell you a lot, because these are just images. I'm not going to say anything to give them any context. I'm putting this in here now because of this reference to this image in Stranger Things, and the weird, creepy, eerie similarity to what you see in the Stranger Things image and what you see in the two other videos, and the imagery of the other videos. I'm going to get into this the next part, and I'm not going to be able to show any of that on YouTube or on any of these social media pages, but just make a mental note of these different variations of this different sort of third dimensional reality, evil creature, so to speak. So we've already talked about the artificial womb. We've talked about the intelligence that's artificial. The metaverse is an artificial reality in a different dimension of consciousness. Social engineering, food that is modified, meat, trees, grass, fish that is modified, artificial money, which is what digital currency is, separation of the male-female union, and that is being exacerbated through obviously the LGBTQ agenda. And I'm saying agenda specifically so that nobody listening to me should take that as a offensive, as me speaking against your personal life or your personal, how you live your life personally. No, we're way beyond everybody being limited to only thinking about themselves. There's a very large agenda that's happening with everything that I'm talking about, and the mass promotion and sort of it's kind of like immersing itself in all aspects of American culture and all culture around the world, right? That's planned. That's a part of this strategy. And anybody that thinks that they've got, bazookas and armed at all of humanity in all of these different ways, in the school systems, in the prison systems, with the food, with the every context of humanity right now is under extreme pressure from these evil, wicked people. But the one culture that they're uplifting and giving all this money and all these grants and all this praise and all this love and all this airtime and all of this celebrity, sort of embrace, right? It's in Target, it's in all of the magazines, it's on all of the TV shows, it's in all of the movies, right? That's a part of the agenda. And so even if you do identify as LGBTQ, if you are wide awake in this moment, and I have people in that culture and in that community that follow me, and much love to you. I appreciate you for being here, because I know you got big kahunas to rock with me. You know what I mean? But there are people in that culture that also are looking at this and can see a bigger agenda that's taking place behind the scenes. We need all hands on deck. We need everybody that can see the play and that has something to bring to the table by way of consciousness, resources, insight, the spook that's at by the door, whatever it is. But we have to be in alignment in terms of where we are mentally and spiritually. That's a qualification for me. First and foremost, before we talk about anything else, before we talk about race, before we talk about sexual orientation, before we talk about class and money and fame, I need to understand where you are mentally and spiritually, right? The psychological programming to control your children and to limit parental rights, please take your children out of these schools. Unless you have like a small, not a small, but a private, African center school, or just a private school, Montessori, whatever it is, some religious affiliation, a local community schools, homeschooling, pods or networks. Please, please, please. I can't stress this enough. And there's so much information and there's so much that has happened over the past 2.5 years that I shouldn't even really have to stress the urgency. If you're not operating with urgency as a parent, if your children are in the school system, then you are already falling victim to this agenda, and you need to sit up straight and start taking this serious. The decimation of crops, food distribution centers, manipulation of weather, the towers and their infiltration, the final calcification of the pineal gland, the seat of the soul, which the intention is to turn off the connection that we have with source energy. This is a patent titled The Nervous System Manipulation by Electromagnetic Fields from Monitors. This patent was filed in 2012. I meant to include the whole, I think I was trying to focus on the spacing. I meant to include the patent dates, but the last notation on it was from 2021. I think it was filed in 2012. But it says the physiological effects have been observed in a human subject in response to stimulation of the skin with weak electromagnetic fields that are pulsed with certain frequencies near 0.5 hertz or 2.4 hertz, such as an excite, a sensory resonance. Many computer monitors and TV tubes, when displayed pulsed images, emit pulsed electromagnetic fields of sufficient amplitudes to cause such excitation. It is therefore possible to manipulate the nervous system of a subject by pulsing images displayed on a nearby computer monitor or TV set. For the latter, the image pulsing may be embedded in the program material, or it may be overlaid by modulating a video stream, either as an RF signal or as a video signal. The image displayed on a computer monitor may be pulsed effectively by a simple computer program. For certain monitors, pulsed electromagnetic fields capable of exciting sensory resonances in nearby subjects may be generated even as the displayed images are pulsed with subliminal intensity. And you can see the patent number, just so you can go look this up if you think I'm making this up. And when you pull up the patent, you'll see this image here of this woman, and you can see these arrows that are sort of pointing to all of this different equipment, referencing this sort of transmutation or transference of data and information that's going to and from this woman in this machine or these machines. It says a method for manipulating the nervous system of a subject located near a monitor, the monitor emitting an electromagnetic field when displaying an image by virtue of the physical display process, the subject having a sensory resonance frequency, the method comprising. This is when we talk about all of these mass killings, when we talk about all this chaos. I don't know if you guys saw that video of those girls in New York that ransacked and just completely destroyed that restaurant because they were upset they had to pay an extra $1.75 for sauces for their food. So they started throwing stuff, breaking stuff while people stood around. I mean, it was just so, like you talk about reptilian brain, right? You talk about like human beings that might not have souls. You know what I mean? And then, so it's that part where you see all these people flipping out and losing control out of nowhere for no reason. But then it's also, excuse me, but then it's also the suicides. The statistics of suicides are greatly increasing, especially among young people. So if you got the Jim Jones juice, there's a part of that we're going to talk about during this series. But then even if you haven't gotten the Jim Jones juice, maybe you wore the masks or got or the face coverings, pardon me, or got the swab in the nose. There's that aspect of it. And then there's this manipulation through electromagnetic fields from monitors, right? Then there's the towers, and depending on where you live, your proximity, how close in proximity you are to the new ones that they're putting up, right? And so this is why it's very important. Again, all of this is frequency-based information, frequency-based technology. How do we circumvent this? Whether you're in a rural area or whether you're in an urban area or whether you're in a city, you have to focus on being your vibrational countenance and keeping your frequencies and your energy in alignment with the love frequency. That's going to be the way out of this. The only way out of this is within. I know when I say it, it sounds simple. I'm not talking about not prepping or not being prepared or emergency planning. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm dealing with the spiritual warfare and the ramifications of the mind and the heart of the masses through this agenda, and what it's going to take to kind of get through this. So these are all images of women being videos of women being stalked or attacked by zombie looking entities.
I just rang your doorbell because I have a couple questions for you. Are you sure? I just rang your doorbell because I have a couple questions. Are you sure? What? Are you sure? I just rang your doorbell because I have a couple questions for you. Are you sure? Are you positive? Are you sure? I just have a couple questions for you. Are you sure? Are you positive? I just have a couple questions for you. Are you sure? Are you positive? Are you sure? Are you absolutely certain? Shit. So who are you? What? Yeah? Are you sure? Who are you? Yeah, I got a couple questions. I just wanted to ask you about the baby girl. Yeah, can you hear me? What I'm looking for is the girl that's in the house to come here because I'm going to rape her and kill her. You have her open the door? Rape and kill the girl that's on the other side of the store when she lets me in. I want to rape her and kill her because I have a knife. A gun. And I just want to knock on the door. All right.
He said, I want to rape and kill the girl that lives here because I have a knife and a gun. Now, coming back to this, and again, this is just one of the things that are at play right now. Remember in the Matrix 4, they were activating people and flipping a switch, and people were jumping out of windows and turning themselves into bombs, right? I would love to say that that's only in the movies, but unfortunately, I think the videos that we just watched, as well as this information, right? It says that this patent is for a method for manipulating the nervous system of a subject located near a monitor, the monitor emitting an electromagnetic field when displaying an image by virtue of the physical display process, the subject having a sensory resonance frequency, right? So again, frequency-based beings. And they're harnessing the low vibrational energy of people and turning them against themselves to turn them against humanity. I've talked about this Morgellons for years now. It's in my scientific intervention in our affairs. This is a map from, I want to say this is from like 2019. It isn't up to date. It's from a few years ago, but this is referencing Morgellons disease, right? This is a fibrous disease that has been popping up in hundreds of thousands of people all across the country. This has been happening for the last 10 years, no, probably 15 to 20 years specifically, but there is no recognition of this body inflation or inflammation, and these self-replicating particles. There's no medical, focus on curing this or understanding what it is. It's just something that's kind of been happening, and they've just been sweeping under the rug and calling these people crazy. But you can see from this map, California has the highest number of families that have registered with this particular illness, or this particular trans parasite, because that's what this is. Again, going back to the energy harnessing and the using human beings as batteries, this is there's science and technology infiltrating its way into the human being to take over it, right? And we're not even talking about the Jim Jones juice. But I have noticed in my research over the years that this is something that looks like it is affecting Europeans more than it's affecting non-European races. And it looks like, at least from the data that I see, just from my, the research that I do on this continuously, that the death rate is affecting people of European race in a much greater capacity than it is non-Europeans. Now, I don't have that China is not included in that. Asia is not included in that. We're talking about Canada, we're talking about Australia, we're talking about America, and we're talking about the West, right? I need to stress this because we as a people, the Native and Indigenous and Black and African, whatever you identify, we are so stuck in race-based consciousness that we think that this is all about us, right? We think that the whole controlling the population agenda is just specifically about us. And I wrote a book that kind of supplements that, right? But it's right now in this time frame, this is not just about race. This is way bigger than race. I know I said this in a video before, but I'm going to re-emphasize this. When I spend time in Manhattan Beach and Redondo Beach, there are beautiful high schools and not middle schools, high schools. I've come across like 3 or 4 in my exploring that area. Beautiful, beautiful campuses, beautiful buildings, huge campuses that have towers, the new towers, the dangerous towers that have these towers on site at these schools. And I know these schools they have to be like 65 to 80% white or people of European descent. And these are teenagers in well-to-do areas, right? So I really need for us we're going to have to move out of that limitation in our consciousness, because that means we're not properly prepared for any of this if we just think that this is the agenda and it's only about us. The spiritual ramifications of this is that, God, the creator, Allah, divine consciousness, that purge is getting ready to sit, the darkness that has been ruling this third dimensional reality is getting ready to take a seat. But the purge process has to happen, and that's what all of this
is. It's an
really
emotional
about.
meeting. These people from all over the country all suffer from a baffling disease, including the youngest patient, this little 3-year-old.
Everything about this is not normal. It's going to be really hard.
Mother and daughter say they are both afflicted.
I'm just scared. Very scared.
It's called Morgellons disease. The origin is unknown. What's truly bizarre, the disease produces strange fibers that emerge from the skin.
The X-Files, it's nothing short of that.
The symptoms are painful and even creepy.
The itching was so bad that it was painful.
Stinging, biting, crawling.
Using magnifying devices, they comb their bodies, examining what they say are outbreaks of the disease.
There's one.
You sit and you wonder what on earth could cause this.
And that's the big question about Morgellons disease. You see, most doctors don't recognize it as a disease at all. They say people who claim to have it are delusional, conjuring up parasites, scratching themselves, even planting textiles like cotton on themselves to feed the delusion.
I've had 17 visits with doctors over the past 3 years. All of them, except one, have basically laughed at me.
Nicole.
All right, now I'm not going to play all this because I've been talking about this for a long time, over the years, and I also talked about it in my book, but I'm introducing this into the subject because we just talked about these different ways that they're infiltrating the mind, right? Controlling people emotionally, controlling people mentally. Well, this is one of the ways that they've been infiltrating the physical body. And I think that this technology from the white trails in the sky, which has produced this particular disease in only certain people, doesn't affect everybody. It only affects a small percentage of the population. But I think that the research that they've been able to garner from that has been a part of the process of perfecting this technology, so to speak. So my question is always, and this is only really something that I would be able to get the full answer to, is to actually know these people. Like, what is the overall energetic resonance of the people that this particular disease grows in, right? Are these healthy, vibrant people? Are these spiritually conscious and aware people? Are these meditating, in touch and in alignment with nature, mentally and spiritually and emotionally astute? Or are these people that are suffering in their lives from low pH, acidic sort of low vibrational, realities? And that's not a judgment. It's just, that's how we have to be thinking, because again, this is a frequency war, right? So why does it only affect some people and not others? And I have, again, going back to the race dichotomy, I haven't seen a lot of African or, darker skinned people, or even, just the native people, non-white, I should say. I haven't seen a lot of images and a lot of footage of people other than Caucasians that this is affecting. So again, context in the broader scheme of, are they targeting certain people? Do they have a different agenda? And obviously my book is called Black Matter. So I was referencing them targeting the darker and the native people and the African people of the world in that book, right? But this is the flip side of it. This is the thing that we as the keepers of the planet need to be paying attention to, and not just the things that are affecting us. If you go to Amazon.com in their term of services, on their website, and if you look at this aws.amazon.com, you can pull this up right now, but this is their term of services agreement. I was watching a video and he talked about this, and he showed the same thing that I'm showing you now. And when he showed it, I was like, hell no, I know that can't be on their site. So then I paused the video and I pulled up the website and I found this exact statement that I'm going to read to you guys. Number 42. Oh, my phone. That scared me. I thought I had my ringer off. Okay, so 4210, it says acceptable use, safety, critical systems. Your use of the lumberyard materials must comply with the AWS acceptable use policy. The lumberyard materials are not intended for use with life critical or safety critical systems, such as use in operation of medical equipment, automated transportation systems, autonomous vehicles, aircraft or air control, or air traffic control, nuclear facilities, spacecraft or military use in connection with live combat. However, this restriction will not apply in the event of the occurrence. Listen to this carefully. In parentheses, it says certified by the United States, first letter C, middle letter D, last letter C, or successor body, that's critical, of a widespread viral infection transmitted via bites or contact with bodily fluids that cause human corpses to reanimate and seek to consume living human flesh, blood, or brain or nerve tissue, and is likely to result in the fall of organized civilization. You can go to Amazon's website and you can find this right now. And I know that the first letter C, middle letter D, last letter C also has a zombie alert on their website, which they, kind of put it up there tongue in cheek, like, ha, everybody thinks there's going to be a zombie apocalypse. So here's what you do if it happens. But then you go to Amazon's term of service, and this is written clearly in black and white, and you can stop this video right now and go check this and search this. All right, so again, back to the urgency. And I'm not saying urgency like fear, urgency like chaos. No, urgency like God consciousness. Urgency like being still. Urgency like taking control of your mind and focusing on being self-governed and self-ruled, and not reacting to and being a party to this insane, chaotic world.
The health and the healing and the well-being of our bodies, and it's all about the magnetic fields of the earth. Where this really came into focus was around the events of September 11th, 2001. It was during that time that the United States has two satellites. They're called the GOES, G-O-E-S, Geosynchronous Environmental Satellites, I believe is what they're called. One positioned in the Northern Hemisphere, one positioned in the Southern Hemisphere. And the role of these satellites is to measure the magnetic fields of the Earth and send back readings every 30 minutes. And those readings normally fall within a certain range of data that scientists are relatively used to seeing. Well, it was in September of 2001 that scientists began to see some readings that were off the map, just off the scale compared to what they'd seen in the past. And they said, well, what's happening? What is it that could be influencing the magnetic fields of the entire planet to such a degree that we're seeing these big spikes that our satellites are sending back? We've never seen these before. They overlaid the data from the satellites onto a calendar of months and days, and lo and behold, what they found is that the spike was occurring precisely during the time of September 11th, 2001, and even more precisely that the first spike occurred 15 minutes after the first plane hit the first tower in the World Trade Center. Now, the reason this is so important to a scientist is because for 300 years, our science has been based on two false assumptions. The first false assumption is that everything is separate from everything else, that what happens in one place has no effect on what happens anywhere else. And if it looks like it does, it's only a coincidence. The second false assumption is that our inner experiences of thought, feeling, emotion, and belief have no effect on the world beyond our bodies. Based on those two false assumptions that have been accepted for 300 years by scientists, I can see why there would be a disconnect when they're looking at magnetic fields of the Earth spiking precisely the moment the human emotion of the planet is focused on a disaster. This led to a series of studies, and the bottom line to the studies is this. What they found is that it is human emotion, specifically the magnetic fields produced by the human heart during certain kinds of emotion, that now are documented as extending far beyond our bodies into the physical world, and now to such a degree that our satellites hundreds of miles above the surface are able to pick these up. This has led to a number of studies now showing that when a certain number of people come together and they choose in a moment of time to create a precise emotion in their hearts, that emotion literally can intentionally influence the very fields that sustain the life on planet Earth. These fields are now implicated in everything from the immune response of humans throughout the planet, climate, weather patterns, cycles of war in peace, our ability to solve problems, our cognitive abilities. All of these, as different as they sound from one another, are all linked to our relationship to the magnetic fields of the Earth.
Now, again, going back to energy harvesting, right? And even how, I'm looking at the concerts and the festivals, particularly the Travis Scott concert, which I 100% believe was a whole satanic ritual. And I believe that more people that was actually credited with that, that catastrophe died than what they're actually really, talking about. But that was totally a satanic ritual. And I believe that the Jim Jones juice, as well as the swabs that they put in the nose of the people who went to that particular festival, as well as, they probably laid the ground with the white trails in the sky. All of those things set up, internally primed those people to be zapped with frequencies from the towers or the specific I talked about this in another video, and I'm trying to be careful about what I say, but those stadiums, there are stadiums now that are lined with the equipment that they use in the towers. And the 5G aspect of that is latent in certain stadiums across the world, right? The one in Houston where this situation took place is one of those stadiums. So again, energy harvesting, the entire 2020 to 2022 fiasco, mind manipulation, death, catastrophe, chaos, suffering, depression, anxiety, suicide, fear, people tuning in to CNN for 14 hours a day to get completely obliterated by fear-based consciousness, right? Think about the Sandy Hook mass shooting. Think about the recent Texas shooting. All of those children, 19 children murdered in cold blood. And now here we are just a few months later. It's been a few weeks, I think. And it's just kind of skipped to my loo, nothing to see here. right? Think about Roe versus Wade. Think about all of the crazy, out of their mind, you know, feminists and, you know, women who probably aren't even having sex or sexually active, you know, screaming at the top of their lungs in videos and creating all of this chaos in their lives, and the ripple effects that it has on their families and the men in their lives, because they're losing their mind over this entire program and you know, movie happening in the background. Think about China and New York and California in 2020. Think about, I won't say 8 billion people, but probably out of the 8 billion people, maybe 6.5 of those people really continuously embedded in fear and mental and spiritual chaos over the last 2 years. Hopefully, we have a, you know, 1.5 billion that didn't participate in, you know, some type of way, right? I hope you were rebellious at some point. Again, energy harnessing though. So the Kabbalion says nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. This principle explains that the differences between different manifestations of matter, energy, mind, and even spirit result largely from varying rates of vibration. From the all, or God, which is pure spirit, down to the grossest form of matter, all is in vibration. The higher the vibration, the higher position in the scale. The vibration of spirit is at such an infinite rate of intensity and rapidity that it is practically at rest, just as a rapidly moving wheel seems to be motionless, right? So again, in contextualizing everything that I just said and everything I'm getting ready to say from here, because this is where we're going to get into the kind of the, you know, turn up the craziness a little bit, but having spiritual discernment, heart-based living, emotional well-being, clarity. Identify all the areas in your life right now where you don't have clarity. And that's the job. My relationship is chaotic, it's out of control. Okay, well, you need to have clarity. You need to get clarity on what the next move is, and let your next move be your best move. You know, if you hate your job, if you are struggling with, you know, relationships with your children, with your family, you have to make a decision that you want to get clarity in those areas. And then you have to vibrate that frequency and that intention in the universe. We are carbon, and I'm using the word carbon specifically because when I start getting into this technology that they're using against us, they've been studying that aspect of the elements of creation as well as the elements of the building blocks of human beings. And we are frequency-based beings. So these are the tools, these are the resources. This obviously is like a simple synopsis, but you say, I don't know what to do. Here's where you start. The lips of wisdom are closed except to the ears of understanding. Understanding comes first. You can't skip that part. And again, social media, the internet is making people very mentally and spiritually and emotionally lazy and complacent and mediocre. You have to have understanding to get wisdom. So under no circumstances is sitting down and listening to a YouTube video of somebody like me or the 10,000 other people on social media that are considered influencers and having a feel-good moment or an emotional fix, right, in that time frame, but then don't start to make that during watching the content, I should say, but then not actively activating the frequency and vibration that's being transmuted through the content that you're watching. And you can only be watching high vibrational content to help you raise your vibration. So if you watch a lot of content that makes you stressed out or worried or fearful or doubtful, then that's not the frequency that you should be aspiring to.